Hey, it's Jay, and it's finally time for me to talk about my number one favorite film of all time, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Yeah, it's kind of an odd pick, seeing as it came out so many years ago, but I was always interested in seeing this movie, and when I did, I fell in love instantly because of how extremely solid this film actually is. And yeah, so let's get into the plot because I have a lot to say about this film, seeing as it is my favorite. Before we start, real quick, I know on previous reviews on my show and all my reviews, I do end up talking about the whole movie front to back without giving any real warning. But with this one, I highly recommend that if you haven't seen Psycho and have full intentions of seeing Psycho, that you click away right now. Because the twist in this movie is one of the best that's out there in Hollywood. So this is just a friendly little warning to turn away if you don't want this movie spoiled for you. So let's continue. So, during a lunch break in Phoenix, Arizona, Marion Crane, played by Janet Leigh, and her boyfriend, Sam Loomis, discuss how they cannot get married because of Sam's debt. After Marion returns to work, she sees that a client left a $40,000 payment for one of her properties because Marion is a real estate agent. She complains of a headache, and her boss requests her to go deposit the money in the bank and tells her she can go home early because of said headache. When she returns home, she decides to steal that $40,000 deposit and go to Fairville, California to meet up with Sam to pay for their wedding because that's what they really want to do. So she ends up stealing money to get married to this Sam guy. So on her way to California, Marion pulls her car on the side of the road and falls asleep. She's awoken by a state trooper who had been following her and becomes very suspicious after he interrogates Marion, and she's acting very, very strange because, you know, she just stole $40,000, which back in that time, that's a lot of money. So she's acting very suspicious. So the cop already has a bunch of red flags flying off with Marion. She stops at a auto body shop to swap out her Ford mainline with a Ford Custom and swaps the plates from Arizona to California to avoid growing more suspicion from the officers. However, the same state trooper that pulled her over is also at the auto body shop and eyes her very, very suspiciously as she abruptly pulls away and, you know, flees the scene. So Marion's not doing a very good job covering the fact that she has, $40,000 in cash in her car. So we'll have to see how this turns out for her. So during a heavy rainstorm, Marion seeks refuge in the Bates Motel. And the proprietor for the Bates Motel, Norman Bates, seems like a very, very friendly guy. He is just running a business, and he invites Marion for a light dinner after she checks in. Marion accepts, but overhears an argument with Norman Bates, who's played by Anthony Perkins, and his mother about how he brought a female into their gothic home, which, to give you guys a little bit of perspective, Norman lives in a separate house with his mother on the other side of the motel, and then when you cross the little path, you get to the actual motel rooms. So that's what she means by bringing her into their home. So then they move the dinner to the parlor of the Bates Motel. And, you know, Norman just kind of tells his story about living with his mentally ill mother and how hard it is. And this actually really moves Marion that he's able to take care of his mother like this. And she decides that the next day she's going to drive right back to her place of business and deposit the money instead of keeping it for herself to fund her and Sam's wedding. That night while she's showering, a shadowy figure emerges, and I think you all know this scene. It's been parodied everywhere, you know, with the stabbing and the weep, weep, weep music, and Marion is actually killed. And I'll talk more about why this is so serious in the review portion of the video. But Marion is killed. Norman Bates rushes into the room after hearing the screaming and sees all the blood and panics and scolds, "Oh God, Mom, what did you do? Blood everywhere." And he takes all her possessions, and unbeknownst to him, the $40,000 in cash, which has been wrapped up in a newspaper on her nightstand, takes all her possessions and drives her car into like the lagoon that's right by the Bates Motel. So yeah, Marion is now dead, and it seems as though Norman Bates' mom is to blame. So a week later, after Marion's death, her sister Lila Crane, played by Vera Miles, arrives to confront Sam about Marion's disappearance because it's been a week. And the private investigator, Milton Arbogast, played by Martin Balsam, does confirm that Marion is wanted for stealing $40,000. And so they go do a little background check on her, and it has been confirmed that she stayed at the Bates Motel. So they make their way over there, and, Norman greets them, and they interrogate him. But Norman is very skittish and very stammery, and his stories don't line up. He tells one thing and then contradicts it the next sentence. So this is very suspicious, and Norman does bring up his mother. And when the private investigator wants to meet with Norman's mother, he staunchly defends that he cannot go see his mom. He refuses. He absolutely denies him the right to go see his mom. However, the private investigator sneaks into his home to try to find Norman's mom. But when he reaches the top of the steps, a mysterious figure, presumably Norman's mother, comes out of a room out of nowhere and stabs the private investigator, and he falls down flights of steps, breaking bones, and it's a really brutal scene. So now the private investigator, the only person who could try to help and find where Marion went, is now dead, thanks to presumably Norman's mom. So there seems to be no news from Arbogast, and Lila and Sam, who's played by John Gavin, by the way, I forgot to mention that, haven't heard from him, so they're very worried, and they go to the motel to find out what the heck's going on. Lila sees a figure looking out the window of the Bates' home, not the motel, the home, and ignores her knocking. She's knocking at the door to try to come in, and she's just not getting anything from this woman. So suspicions are very, very high about what's going on. And they find out that Mrs. Bates actually died in a murder-suicide years ago. So how is Norman Bates' mom committing all these murders when she killed herself years ago? Norman then takes his mom to the fruit cellar to hide her away so that nobody can see her. Lila and Sam begin to grow suspicious that some ill has fallen on Milton after thinking that he might have ran off with Marion to pursue the $40,000 for himself. So the hunt is on to see what's going on, to get some answers to what is happening in this whole situation with Norman and Marion and the private investigator. So let's find out what happens. So they devise a plan. Sam distracts Norman with casual conversation to try to distract him to keep his attention away from his home as Lila sneaks in to try to case the whole property and see what this place really is and what's going on. Norman kind of catches on and becomes very agitated by Sam's constant questioning and knocks him out and rushes to the house because I think he knows what's going on. Someone's trying to sneak into their house. Lila, who is now in the fruit cellar where Mrs. Bates is, discovers her and tries to get her attention, but when she doesn't receive an answer, she turns the chair to realize that Mrs. Bates this whole time has been a mummified corpse. And as Lila lets out a scream, giving away her position, Norman bursts into the fruit cellar wearing Mrs. Bates' clothes and wig and, holding the knife, getting ready to attack Lila. So it's been revealed that this whole time, Norman has been taking on the persona of Mrs. Bates because he's that messed up in the head because of his childhood. And that's the voice you've been hearing. It's been Norman's voice. He has sort of like a multiple personality disorder type thing. And Sam was able to awaken from his unconsciousness just in time to stop Norman from killing Lila. So they now have Norman Bates, who is who is responsible for all of these murders. Marion's and private investigator Milton, and Lila's if Sam didn't act quickly enough. So at the courthouse, it is now revealed what is really going on. Norman is the one who killed his mother and father 10 years ago out of jealousy. And he takes on this mother persona because of all the guilt he bears for killing his mom. And he retrieved her corpse and acted as if she was still alive, creating this alternate personality in his mind, but kept the characteristics exactly the same. She's just as overbearing as she was when she was alive. And whenever Norman becomes attracted to a woman, Mother kills them. It's revealed that he's killed 2 more girls prior to Marion and private investigator Milton Arbogast. Before those 2, he killed 2 other girls because he started to fall for them, and Mother, took the reins and ended up killing them. So Yeah, that's very, very disturbing. So in the psychiatric ward, in the room where Norman's being held, his mother is denying all the murders and blaming Norman to have him locked up. It's probably one of the creepiest endings to any movie on planet Earth. Yeah, it's such a good film. That was Psycho. The film ends with probably one of the scariest scenes from any movie, where Norman just looks up at the camera and smiles as mother, because she's just trying to prove that she isn't capable of committing such a heinous act. It's really, really creepy, and that was Psycho. Now, I know that I kind of rushed through the plot, but that's because I wanted to get to why this film is my favorite, because I just think I need to explain myself, seeing as this is my number one favorite film of all time. Everything about this film is perfect. And if you guys saw my top 5 my top 5 things I hate about horror movies, please check that out, because it'll really punctuate my point when I'm talking about Psycho. Psycho does an amazing job of creating an environment that's unsettling. Right when you meet Norman Bates, actually, no, forget that. Right when Marion pulls up to the Bates Motel, you know something's wrong with its gothic look. Something isn't right about this motel. We don't know what it is, but Norman Bates just adds fuel to that fire. He's very, very, very unsettling, even when he's acting friendly. You know, he hasn't shown his mentally disturbed side yet. He's still just trying to, having a casual conversation. And, his line with, "We all go a little mad sometimes," just like, okay, what is going on with this dude? There's something not right. And then after the first murder with Marion, which, by the way, to go back to my previous point, the reason why it's such a big deal that Marion was murdered is because Janet Leigh was the leading lady. You do not kill the leading lady, especially that early on in the film. To have such a massive star like Janet Leigh and to kill her off so quickly in one of the most ingenious shot films in any film I've ever seen, it was unprecedented at the time. And that's what makes Psycho such a risky film, because they did stuff like that. They killed off Janet Leigh. You don't do that. And they did it. And the shots were just gorgeous. Hitchcock was able to make a scene so gory without any gore being shown. You don't see the knife enter her body at all, but the sounds and the way it's shot and the frantic motions as Marion's trying to block the knife, jabs into her body, with the blood slowly pouring into the sink. Which, fun fact, that was I believe it was chocolate syrup, because to get that effect, that dark runny effect. It's just so well done. The shots and the editing and the pacing of that scene to just make it seem so horrifying without a single, entrance wound. At least, because in special effects now you could really play up somebody being stabbed, but you couldn't really do that back in the 60s. So the way it was shot was so brilliant that it made it one of the goriest scenes in the film. Absolutely brilliant. I think you all know that scene because, again, it's been parodied with the shadowy figure approaching and then being stabbed. Just everything about it is just so special. So back to the environment. And then after Marion's death, Norman slowly descending into his mentally, challenged personality, where he's all skittish and stammering and he can't get his story straight when the private investigator comes, adds to the suspense and, what is happening with Norman. Because, at the time, we think his mother is the one who's committing all these murders. Even after the private investigator, which that's a good scene, too. Because it comes out of nowhere. We don't know that Norman's in that house. We know the PI goes to that house to look around against Norman's wishes. So to have his mom come out of nowhere and just kill him, it's like, whoa, where the heck did you come from? And his fall down the stairs, so brutal, so violent, with the cracking sounds, and he's just down there at the bottom of the steps. All leading up to the final reveal, which that Norman was his mom the whole time, and she comes out and tries to kill Lila. It's just like, whoa, that's insane. This guy's really messed up in the head. And it just shows how troubled and tormented poor Norman Bates actually was in his childhood, to actually take on the persona of his mother, who he murdered all those years ago, out of jealousy and out of the guilt, he takes her in a mummified corpse, a decaying, disgusting corpse, and keeps her in his home as if she was really there and takes on this persona. It's scary. Scarier than any horror movie that I've seen in modern day because it creates a surreal environment of what is going on. When a film can put you on edge just by seeing the Bates Motel without being introduced to the killer, that's good. That's solid. And I just have to point this out. It has one of the greatest trailer spots on planet Earth. It involves Alfred Hitchcock, the movie's director, walking through the Bates Motel, giving away everything, except for obviously who Mrs. Bates ends up actually being. He doesn't give that away, but everything. He gives away all the kills. He gives away the PI's murder. He gives away Marion's murder, but talks about it in a way that makes you curious. Because he doesn't just say, oh yeah, Mrs. Bates comes, opens the curtain, and kills her. No, he's like for the PI, and for example, it's like, oh, and she came out of that room there, and there was a horrible crack, and let's go to another room. Well, what happened? Wait, stop. You can't just, start talking about that and leaving. And he does so many beautiful things. He opens up this dresser, right? And he just looks at the camera with like a face on. What was in that dresser? I want to know now. So nobody knows what's in that dresser, so now you have to see it. He goes into a picture and it's like, see, this picture is really, really, really important. Let's go to the next room. And it's like, but why is that picture important? He did such a great job doing everything wrong, but doing everything right at the same time by keeping things vague enough that we're like, well, wait a minute, why? And just the way he describes Mrs. Bates is so bone-chilling, how he talks about she was just the most awful and deranged woman on planet Earth. And he gets so uncomfortable that he just has to stop for a minute and then just continue to the next room. And it's like, dang, that's some great dialogue to describe this woman that we're going to be encountering this whole movie. Now I have to go see what's going on. This film was so kept in secret that if you bought a ticket, right, to see the movie in theaters, and you were a second late, the doors close and you cannot go in because you can't miss a single detail in this movie. That's powerful. They begged of you, do not spoil the ending, because let me tell you something, if this ending was spoiled for me when I first saw this movie, I would be so angry, because that is one of the greatest twists in cinema history, that Norman was Mrs. Bates this whole time. Just everything about this film is so glorious, and that monologue at the end is so bone-chilling that if I had to rank a top 10 most bone-chilling moments in horror, that would be number one. Hands down, no questions asked. Just the way the mom, Mrs. Bates, is so willing to put Norman away, lock Norman away for the murders he committed, is absolutely horrifying. And just the look he gives, There was a remake of Psycho, and I never really saw it. It stars Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates. I haven't really seen it, but I have seen the "She Would Never Hurt a Fly" monologue. It just doesn't work. Anthony Perkins, with his look, is just, it's horrifying. The way the shadow is cast on his face, you can really see the bags under his eyes as he's looking up at the camera, and the derangement in his smile, just so good. And I mean, it's no question, no argument that can be made that can change my mind for making this film a 5 out of 5 stars, worthy of any watch, especially if you're a fan of horror, classic films, because this came out in 1960. Alfred Hitchcock, because he also directed The Birds. That's another great one. Just everything about this film screams horror, screams psychological thriller, and it meets all the criteria to be number one on my list. I'm keeping this one kind of brief because go watch it. Don't listen to me ramble about it. Go watch Psycho, however means necessary. Check it out. You won't regret it, I swear. If you like being creeped out and on edge, this movie is for you. So, I'm going to be taking a break, seeing as Thanksgiving is next week. I want to focus on, Thanksgiving and family. I don't really want to focus on making a video, but I will be back the Sunday after. Don't you worry. Just wanted to let you guys know that, so no video was posted. You guys wonder what's going on. So no video next week, but I will be back the week after. So until that next time, guys, that is a wrap.
FBI, open up!
Oh shit.
It's sad when a mother has to speak the words that condemn her own son, but I couldn't allow them to believe that I would commit murder. They'll put him away now, as I should have years ago. He was always bad, and in the end, he intended to tell them that I killed those girls and that man, as if I could do anything except just sit and stare, like one of his stuffed birds. Oh, they know I can't even move a finger, and I won't. I'll just sit here and be quiet, just in case they do suspect me. They're probably watching me. Well, let them see what kind of a person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they're watching. They'll see and they'll know, and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.